Yo, what's up everybody? How you doing? This is your Coach Renz, and I want to thank you guys for taking this time to spend with me. We're going to talk about how you have to be selfish in order for you to be successful. And I know that hurts a lot of you guys' sensibilities, but as I explain this, you're going to understand. But before I go there, I want to thank all my subscribers. And if you're finding me for the first time, please go ahead and hit that subscribe button and that bell button so you get notifications every time I load a video or do a live chat. But go ahead and hit that subscribe. If you want to participate in any of the giveaways, you have to be a subscriber. Our next giveaway is to give away one of these bracelets. So in your comments, you have to type the word bracelet in your comments so that you can win one of these bracelets. Speaking of which, Yolanda McMillan, please private message me. Let me know what flavors of popcorn that you want to win. She won our last giveaway, which is 10 bags of Uncle Ren's popcorn. urpopcorn.com is where you can go. Look up the flavors, Yolanda. And you can even send me a contact on that website to let me know which 10 flavors you would like in your mailing address so I can get that out to you immediately. Now, moving on. What is it? What is it about selfishness that either makes a person evil or makes a person successful? That's what we're going to break down. But before we go there, let's look at it. You see, the idea of selfishness is not its own conception. It actually exists on the polarity scale, just like everything else. There is a side to the right, a positive side to the right, and a negative side to the left. We're going to use positive and negative. We know that there is no such thing, that neither one is good or bad, but we're going to use the terminology of positive and negative. To the far right, we have a selfishness that actually leads you to the greatest version of yourself and the greatest life that you will ever have. But to the left, we have the negative portion. We have a portion of selfishness that most people vibrate closer to, which is why most people are suffering through their lives. And within this, we're also going to look at the scale of compromise. Compromise is one of the key things that determines where you vibrate. And we're going to look at that as one of our solutions to determine how you're going to vibrate in a way that causes you to move to the right side of the polarity scale of selfishness. So let's break down the definition of them. First, we're going to look to the left. The negative portions of the brain, the negative portions of selfishness, the vibration that got you losing more so than you're winning, but your mind is telling you that you're doing the right thing to win. Because most people define selfishness as a person who is so self-absorbed that they're only doing things for themselves. That is somewhat valid, but actually incorrect because it's ambiguous. Here's the thing. Selfishness really has two definitions. The first definition is the one to the left. To the extreme left, it is a person who believes that their will, their way, how they think, how they interact, how they move, their actions is the only way, and that everyone should move themselves into being just like that. That if you want to live your life in a different way than they think, then you're wrong. You're absolutely incorrect. That you're demon possessed. That you're out of your mind. You're crazy. That you have no humility. That all these things is a negative aspect of your personality. But here's the thing about it. Those people are the kind that will look at, like I drive past a house quite often. This house currently is owned by Rick Ross. It used to be owned by Evander Holyfield. Right? Now, the thing about it is those people who have this definition of selfishness would say that Evander Holyfield was wrong to buy and spend so much money on a house of that size, way bigger than his family ever would have needed, way bigger than anything that he needs individually. They would have said that the money he spent on that house, he could have built so many homes for other people, that he could have provided schools and hospitals and things like that for other people, that he could have helped out all these other people, not realizing that the mere purchase of the land supported other people's businesses, the surveying of the land, the construction of the grounds, the construction of the home, the people who clean the home, the people who maintenance the home, that it provides for all those people. It also increased the property value of the entire area. So it is not as if the home did not benefit anyone else. It is just we look to the extreme of you have to help these people who are in poverty or indigent or have problems like that. That we don't see the big picture, the full picture, I should say, the full picture. But we see that as being selfish. We see that as being selfish, but we can say that about anybody. If you buy a home that costs $200,000, well, you could have bought you a home that cost $60,000 and the other $140,000 could have built 2 other homes for 2 other people. Why aren't you looked upon as being selfish? When you're paying apartment rent at a place that's charging you $1,700 a month to have your 3-bedroom, 2-bedroom apartment, depending upon where you live, then why couldn't you just instead get an apartment that costs $600 a month and give that other remaining money to someone else so that they can have an apartment? Anyone can be looked upon as being selfish. Coach Renz, you bought this shirt. You could have spent half for a different shirt and then bought a second shirt for somebody else. Somebody is always trying to convince you that what you do is wrong. What you do is selfish, never looking at themselves, but what you do is selfish because they have a way that they perceive how you should live. Oh, you're not acting a certain way in this relationship. You're not acting a certain way in business. Then you're being selfish. There are people who do that. There's a difference when a company merges than when a company has a hostile takeover. There's a difference when a company is purchased than when a company has a hostile takeover. There's a difference when companies thrive next to each other than when a company purposely do things to run the other company out of business. There is that level of selfishness that's acting over there to the left, where you're trying to force your will on other people. And as long as you're doing that, then yes, that is the type of selfishness that injures other people, that hinders other people from being able to achieve their life goal, their life dreams. But when you are going to the right, that definition is totally different. So let's break that one down. What is the definition of selfishness over here? Selfishness to the right is when you say that I have a standard of living. I have a standard of how I want to live in my house. I want my house to be kept clean. I want my house to be kept organized. You have that standard of living. That is how you determine you want to live. And if other people want to live in your home, they must maintain that standard. Not because you're forcing them to live in your home. You're just saying, if you choose to live in my home, this is the standard. Many parents do this with their children, or they should at least do this with their children, but they don't. Many people don't do this in their relationship, but they should do this in their relationship. That way, it gives at least the relationship person an option. Do I want to live to this person's standard? Do I want to live like this? Do I want to live in a house that is kept so clean that it feels like a museum, that I can't feel comfortable in a house? But on the flip side, do I want to live in a house that's so disorganized or dirty that I don't feel like I can survive, like I can live, like I'm at peace in this house? Either way, I'm not at peace. Yeah, I'm not at peace if I can't be comfortable, but I'm not at peace if my comfort is surrounded by trash and bags and paper and unclean tables and things like that. So either way, I can't do it. And people will say, well, that's what a compromise is. I'm going to get there in a minute. You see, if I'm building a business and my goal is to sell that business, then eventually I sell it because that's the way I wanted to build that business. I own Uncle Renz Popcorn, also My Naturally Pure, as well as Coach Renz. Now, in those industries, I have a certain, the employees who work, they have a certain standard that they have to keep. I'm not forcing them to work for me. That's slavery. That is selfishness when it's slavery, forcing people to work for you and keep your standard. But when I say that this is my standard, if you work here, you must maintain this standard. If you don't, you will be fired. I am being selfish to my standard of living. I have a standard of health. If I eat a certain way and you want to eat with me, if the way I eat bothers you, then you should not eat with me. You have the option, the choice to make your standard and live your standard. Selfishness that leads to success is when people decide, this is my standard and I'm going to live to my standard. Now, if people can come around me and gravitate towards me, you know, they say the way you vibe attracts your tribe. If my tribe is attracted to me, then they will live with me in my standard. But those who can't live with me, they will be repelled by it. I know people like to say opposites attract, but in many other videos, I've expressed how opposites do not attract. That only happens in things like magnets and things like that. If you have a super clean person, but you have a super dirty person, they will not be attracted to one another. They will repel one another. If you have a person who is I'm not talking about they're just frugal. They are like miserly, and you have someone who is incredibly free spending, they will repel each other. Now, some people there will say, no, it takes a balance. They need to balance each other out. Why do you say they need to balance each other out? They do not have to balance each other out. If this person chooses to live miserly, who are you to determine that they should change? Simply because someone who lives freely like that wants to be with them, if that's a core thing about them, then they have no need to change it. They will actually injure themselves. They will actually move to the other side of selfishness. They will cause themselves more problems because they are not living up to their standard. Now, this is where compromise comes into play. Compromise is a tricky thing, because when you say compromise, many people think that you have to compromise on everything in order to make sure that people are together. But then they'll say, but you have to have your core that you're unwilling to compromise on. Now, here's the selfish part to the left side. If I say that my core is the way that my house is organized, my house has to stay to a 90% organized, 90% clean, and my house has to function in a certain way. If I say that my intimacy must function in a certain way, if I say that my money must function in a certain way, and if I say that I will never get another job if I can help it, I'm going to be an entrepreneur for the rest of my life, and I'm going to function in those ways, and I must maintain a certain level of health and a certain level of fun and activity, and I don't believe in worrying. So if I must have that, that is my core. Who are you to say that my core is wrong, that I need to compromise on any of my core? That is you being selfish to the left, because you're trying to tell me what I need to compromise on. Those are my non-compromising things. I'm not compromising. Those are true to me. I'm not compromising on any of those things. Never, ever will I compromise on those. I have in the past. And when I compromised on those things, my life fell apart. My life didn't progress. My life didn't achieve the goals that I had desired for myself. So therefore, that compromise took me away from achieving my desires. I didn't vibrate when it came to the scale of money, scale of financial health. I didn't vibrate to the right. I didn't swing to the right. I swung to the left because I gave compromise. Compromise. This is why compromise is not good. Now, let me give you a situation of compromise that doesn't matter. That does work for you, I should say. Not doesn't matter. It does work for you. Sweet elixir of life first. I need some coffee. So about 20 years ago, I had this couple. I was in the Marine Corps. I had this young couple in my unit. They were always fighting. I always had complaints. I always had an issue. So I brought them in because I recognized that if my Marine has an unhappy household, then he's not going to function properly in his job. I need him to function properly in his job. My standard is that I need him to function properly in his job. So this issue had to be settled. So when I sat down with them, I asked them a question. I said, okay, what is your first big problem that always mess up you guys' evenings? Because he always come to work talking about he had a bad evening at home. What starts out the problem? And she said, well, the problem is he comes home and the first thing he do, he takes off his boots and he just leave them by the door. And then he goes into the refrigerator, gets him something to drink, and then sits down on the sofa to decompress. So I asked her, I said, so is it the decompression? The fact that he comes home like that? She was like, no. I said, okay. So it's not a problem if y'all communicating as soon as he comes in the door because you haven't seen each other. He just needs a moment to decompress. You're fine with that because why? And she said, well, I'm coming home roughly at the same time and I need a moment to decompress. And she goes straight upstairs and she decompresses, right? So, okay. So it's not decompression. What's the problem? She said he leaves his boots at the front door. She said, I need him to bring the boots upstairs, put them in the closet so that they're put away. And he said, when I come home, I don't want to go upstairs. I want to go into the kitchen, grab something to drink, and go sit down and decompress. I don't want to go upstairs. Going upstairs, I'll go up there later. And he said that later, when I go upstairs, I do take my boots upstairs. I said, okay. So the real problem wasn't the boots. So I asked her, I said, so let me ask you a question. If you put a shoe rack by the door, because I knew this lady was very organized. If you put a shoe rack by the door, and if he came home, he took off his boots and he put them on the shoe rack so that they're organized in a place, and then goes, does his thing, and then later on takes his shoes upstairs, would you be fine with that? And her response was, if he actually put them on a shoe rack, now they're organized, now they're in a place. I don't care if they ever comes upstairs, because actually it'll make more sense for them to stay downstairs, through the week, because he's going to put them right back on the next morning. Because she does not like shoes to be worn throughout the house. That's her standard. I understand that. Keep the floors nice, keep the carpet nice. I get it. So that was their compromise. He would come home, take off his boots, put them by the door. That couple started having great days. All of a sudden, within a week, this was a totally different Marine. Why? Because the compromise wasn't so much about the shoes going upstairs. It was about how the house was organized, things being put in their place. His thing was he just didn't feel like going upstairs immediately. So the compromise was they both got to keep their standard, but they had a way to work so that both their standards are met. Her standard was organizing the house and keeping it organized. His standard was being able to decompress and going upstairs when he feels like it and taking it. And so both of them, neither one of them liked for shoes to be worn around their house, trust me, because you go to their house and they had the little Japanese, because they was in Okinawa for a while, they had the little Japanese shoes for you to just slip your feet on, slip those on to walk around their house. Those shoes never went outside, so they were always clean. That was their standard. Both standards were met, and that's what true compromise is. True compromise is not you losing your standard. True compromise is both of you figuring out a way to maintain your standard, but in such a way that you can still manage and work together. That's a simple explanation. I know some things are more intricate and have way more detail and need more work and more solutions. But the basic premise is keep your standard, figure out a way that both people can maintain their standard. It's like when a company merges, you got to be able to keep the standards of both companies. Now, if a company is in a hostile takeover, the one who took over, they force their standard on the next company, whether it's higher or lower. They force their standard, they force their systems, they force their people, they force their way of doing business. That's the selfishness that takes away from happiness, from joy, from elation, from success. The type of selfishness that doesn't is when you get to maintain your standard. So in the compromising situation, you only compromise those things either, and there's another type of compromise. You compromise those things where you're able to keep your standard and they can keep their standard, but you figure out a way to work. The other compromise is for the things that don't really matter. The things that are not in your, I must maintain this standard to have my success, right? Those kind of standards. Like, I'm chivalrous. I open the door. I put the gas in the car. I carry the groceries. I do those kinds of things. I'm handling the trash. I don't like, she can't handle the trash. Those are some of my standards. Can't let those standards go. Now, sometimes I'm not around. Okay, she has to do it. That's okay. But if I'm around, it's a standard. If I'm not around, okay. Don't expect you to run out of gas because I maybe forgot to go to the gas station. But there are other things that for you or me that may not be as hardcore. About a standard that a person must keep, a way that things must be done. The only type of standards that you must keep are the ones that's, no matter even when you compromise, it's going to bother you. It's going to cause conflict inside of you. Those things, you have to maintain your standard. You have to maintain your standard. Without it, it doesn't work. Without it, you'll find yourself always having problems. The most successful people, the happiest people are the ones who maintain their standard. And that standard is something you set for yourself. Don't ever allow your standards you set for yourself to be compromised for someone else's happiness, to be compromised so that someone else feels comfortable, to be compromised so that someone else feels like they're doing the better job for you. You have to live your life on your terms, how you want to live them. My level of success it may not be yours. If I decided that my level of success involved the big mansion and the estates, I'm not going to feel guilty simply because you think I should spend my money a different way. If my level of success means living in another country I don't have to endure winter ever again, that's my level. Just because you think I should stay in America, that's your opinion. I care less. And you have to get to that point where you don't care what other people think about what motivates you and what you desire to have in your life. If you're a person who desires to have PDA, public displays of affection, and that bothers your friends, your neighbors, your family, then don't allow their standard to become yours, because you're not going to be happy in that relationship. If your standard is that you want to drive the Maserati, or you want to drive a Porsche, or whatever car, Lamborghini, McLaren, if that's your standard, and somebody says that that's a waste of money, why are you spending so much money on that? Don't allow their standard to cause you worry and concern. Don't allow their standard to cause you to think that you did something wrong. If you want to travel the world and spend $25,000 to stay in a hotel, that's your standard. That's your desire. Who is anybody to determine how you spend your money? If that gave you value, if that gave you happiness, then that's for you. Just because it may not give them value or happiness, that's for them. But don't compromise and don't feel bad. The moment you feel bad is when you're giving in to their standard. And as long as you keep giving in to someone else's standards, to their selfishness, and not give in to your own selfishness, you'll find yourself losing, always losing. So please, 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 please keep your standards. Do not negotiate or compromise off your core standards. Recognize the things that really doesn't matter as much to you and that you can compromise a bit on it. But when you do compromise in a way where both parties are happy. And here's the thing, not everybody can be in business with you. Not everybody can be in relationship with you. Not everybody can go and do what you're going to go and do. And not everybody can appreciate you. Not everybody can appreciate where you are and what you're doing. And for those who can, don't worry about it. It may be family, it may be friends, husband, wife, children, doesn't matter. You only have your life to live for yourself. And so you have to live your life for yourself. If other people can't handle that, deal with that, then let them be naturally repelled so that those who are attracted to you can fulfill those gaps and be in your life as they should. I've always said that family ain't got nothing to do with blood. Family got something to do with how we are with one another, treat one another, love one another. That's family to me. That's family to me. So you guys, remember, you got to free yourself to be yourself because your greatness is non-negotiable. And please hit that subscribe button. Comment the word bracelet so that you can win, 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 win. Y'all have a great day. And like I said, one more time, just one more. You got to free yourself to be yourself because your greatness is non-negotiable.